Good afternoon, everybody. I am really, really excited to be able to welcome you and host the discussion that we're going to have. As you'll see from your screens, it's powering the UK. It's powering UK green growth in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and I'm joined by two fantastic experts who are going to share their experience in their very different roles and some of the work that they're doing. I'm Sarah Conboy. I'm the executive leader at Huntingdonshire. So, in simple terms, that means I'm the elected leader. I've been a councillor for a long time, and I've been working in this area for a long time, not UK Green Growth, but Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And I've been in this pavilion for the last 3 days. And I have to say, every time that we've had a panel on the stage, I have learnt something new about an area that I thought I knew really, really well. And I know a little bit about what we're going to talk about because we've had a pre-brief, but you're going to hear some really exciting stuff that we're doing and some things I hope that will give you an opportunity to do a bit of networking at the end. There is an opportunity to ask some questions, so do notice. Please think of some things if you'd like to ask, because we welcome some participation, particularly at this point of the day. I'm kind of reminded of my student days when there was a survivor's photograph. If you made it to the end of the event, it feels a bit like that, but I'm really pleased to have you all here. So I'm going to introduce Matt. I'm going to embarrass Matt a little bit and give you a little bit of background about Matt and then Jo, and then they're going to make their opening remarks. So Matt Sampson is the Development Director for the Crown Estates. And it says in my blurb, Matt, so I'm hoping that there's nothing here that's going to surprise you, that he's the Director of the Regional Regeneration Team, working in the development of science and innovation parks, garden villages, energy parks and mixed-use urban regeneration schemes. The projects that he's been involved in have included the Hemel Hempstead Garden Communities, 2 billion GDV, if I can get my words out, and Cambridge Business Park, which is 1.4 billion GDV. And his previous experience includes work on the garden communities, national urban regeneration, leisure-led development and Greater London office development. So for those of you in the room that are thinking, oh, that links quite nicely with some of the things I'm involved in, Matt's the person to grab at the end of the session and have a conversation with. I'm going to introduce Jo. And Jo Saunders is the Director for Master Planning at the Imperial War Museums. So some of you might be there and sitting and thinking, where are they? I'm sure Jo will tell you. I already know, but some of you might not have visited them yet. Jo's an experienced manager with demonstrable history of delivering major improvement programmes. She's an arts and heritage specialist, project manager, an event planner, museum and gallery learning specialist with a passion for heritage and craft, which explains her role with those museums. And she's previously worked for Harrow Council, Engage National Association of Gallery Education, the Crafts Council and South Oxfordshire District Council. So somebody else who brings a wealth of knowledge from a range of experiences. I'm going to hand over to Matt first. And then to Jo, would you like to make some opening remarks on the topic?
Of course. Well done for making it. Obviously, the group with the biggest stamina and strongest livers. I think we are literally the last session in the entire place. So well done. We were worried we were going to have to turn the chairs around and have a little meeting amongst ourselves. But thank you for coming. Yeah, Sarah said I'm Development Director at the Crown Estate. I live in Cambridgeshire and spend most of my time actually working on a project in Cambridgeshire as well, specialising now in the innovation-led sector. So question today, can we power UK green growth in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough? Well, I bloody hope so, because I've just spent the last year sort of working on the vision for our £1.5 billion investment in North East Cambridge, and that's really central to what we're trying to achieve with that project. So if we don't, I might be out of a job. I'll do the obligatory little 30-second background on the Crown Estate, just to give you a flavour of who we are, for those of you who don't know us. We try to be a company for the country. We kind of sit in between the public and private sector. And we're probably really well set up to deliver green growth for the nation. We've got one of the largest rural portfolios in the country, so delivering quite a lot of ambition around nature and agriculture and farming. We're custodians of the seabed, for those that didn't know, so quite a lot of interesting activity around renewable energies, offshore wind, floating offshore wind innovation, carbon capture, that sort of thing. And then we've also got a pretty big real estate portfolio as well, which, for those of you that read the press on Monday regarding a deal with Lendlease, our pipeline's doubled now to about 56,000 homes, and close to 20 million square feet of commercial. So with all of that, we try and deliver some profits, which go back to Treasury and the public purse and are reinvested. So yeah, we're kind of set up for that agenda, and one of our biggest projects in Cambridge, we're hoping to tie in with that overall ambition. And then if I've got one more minute, I just thought I'd actually try and answer the question rather than just do all the intro spiel. So the reason I think Cambridgeshire and Peterborough probably can drive UK in the green growth agenda is because we've got a bit of a unique sort of local need relative to other geographies that we work in. I think the kind of inequality, unaffordability crisis has been talked about a lot for the last few years. You know, probably historically there hasn't been that inclusive green growth that we would all want to see. So pretty much all stakeholders I speak to have recognised that and want to change it. So there's the need there. Water and power. I mean, we've been victims of our own success in the region, and now there's got to be some serious innovation in that part of the sector. And then transport capacity. I mean, this is particularly for Cambridge city centre, but also affects the wider region. You know, it's a historic city. Roads are at their, you know, a lot of them are at their capacity, and there's still more, hopefully, green growth to come. And so we've got to be really innovative in the sustainable transport and sustainable mobility solutions we deliver.
Thank you. Jo?
I thought Matt was going to carry on. Sorry. I was just enjoying the chat. Hello. So, yes, I'm Jo. I'm the Director for Moss Planning at Imperial War Museums. One of the branches of the Imperial War Museums, obviously, is IWM Duxford in South Cambridgeshire. But we also look after the Lambeth Road Imperial War Museum in London, the Churchill War Rooms underneath the Treasury, HMS Belfast on the Thames, and IWM North on Salford Quays, Trafford Quays. So I think we're one of the few, if not the only, museum that has an airfield, a bunker and a ship as part of its estate. So it's an interesting challenge. So focusing today on, there you go. There is IWM Duxford, for anyone who doesn't know it. Lovely shot from the air. Duxford originally was bought by IWM as a storage facility because it's got lots of lovely hangars. And then we decided to open it to the public, and then it became very successful. So Duxford is the second largest visitor attraction in the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough district. It's also the second largest in the East Anglian region entirely. So we're only beaten by the Fitzwilliam Museum, and we're not far behind them. So a good summer, we could knock them off the top spot. So we are obviously a contributor to the economy already. In the area, we deliver 43 million GVA to the eastern region, just from Duxford. We operate directly the airfield ourselves, so any of the historic aircraft you see flying in that area, probably taking off and landing from our airfield that we run ourselves. We need to transform Duxford. So having said it's the second largest visitor attraction, we have seen a day-to-day drop-off in our visitor numbers. And we need to, in order to sustain and increase those visitors, we need to change the offer that we've got on site, and we need to do that radically. We don't need to do that in little pieces. We need to make a big, big change. But because we filled up all the hangars when we moved in, we don't have any room. So we need a great big store to be able to decant some of our hangars and then redo our exhibitions in a more sensible chronological order, attract more audiences. We have struggled to try and find a way to fund that and make that happen. Simultaneously, we have been in lots of conversations over the years with Gonville and Caius College, Cambridge, who own all of the land around us and used to own the airfield, and kind of bring that up every time I speak to them. They haven't forgiven the War Office for purchasing it in the First World War and never giving it back. They obviously want to make money out of the land that they own around us, but a lot of the things they've put forward in the past would stop us from flying Spitfires overhead. So after a lot of banging our heads together, we came up with an idea of working together on something that needed the airfield. So we have put together a partnership and in the process of signing a developer to create a low-carbon aviation technology park at the end of Duxford. So this area here. This is focused around new emerging industries using all of that intelligence that comes out of Cambridge University and all of that ambition and drive, and giving those new industries access to an airfield where they can test new models of aviation that hopefully are sustainable. They give us a sustainable income from the airfield. Obviously, we are getting a share of rents, which are helping us sustain IWM Duxford and helping us build. As part of the development, we are essentially phase one. We are building a great big hangar that we can use to move our collections around. But about a quarter of it is going to be a conservation engineering skills and training centre as well. So we've got direct employment within our space, but obviously a 45,000 square metre development alongside for aviation tech. That's a start. I'll probably answer some.
No, that's fantastic, and I think we all want to hear more about both of the bits of work that you're doing. And thank you for bringing some images to share as well. So Matt, what are the opportunities in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough then for green growth? You know, our audience is probably sitting here and thinking it's fantastic. You know, what makes it possible on our patch?
Yeah, I think there's. I mean, the sector mentioned there. I mean, along with Stansted, which I know is slightly outside the patch, but you know, I know there's a big push there around the sustainable aviation fuels.
I intend
as well.
to rebrand it as Stansted Cambridge, not Stansted London.
Okay.
No, Peter.
Yeah, and I suppose, I mean, I thought about this question from the sort of the things we could leverage to deliver on the ambition of green growth, and I think, I mean, there's lots of strength. The trouble would be in the last session of the conference is that a lot of the good stuff's already been covered, so I don't want to reiterate the same points. But I genuinely think what's happening in America is really interesting for us as a leader in green growth and you know, the region and the UK. I think trying to attract. I mean, yes, we've got great universities. We talk about them a lot. They're brilliant. That is a differential. But trying to attract some of the US talent to kind of our universities here, particularly in these types of sectors where they are genuinely starting to move, could make us a real global player. I think, I mean, leveraging our strengths. So where I work in North East Cambridge, it's a real tech cluster, again, really well recognised. But how do we, you know, there's a million subsectors now with tech at the end of it, you know, build tech, agri-tech, clean tech, climate tech. How do we leverage that skill set, but try and focus it towards those mission-led, those green economy type of sectors is quite an interesting challenge. And, you know, a lot of the research is around, you know, the next generation of great innovations are going to come from the convergence of sectors. So that gamification or technologification, that's not even close to being a word, of these sectors is going to be, you know, really important for us.
And Jo, you've already sort of given us a sort of hint about, you know, that collaboration that is around the geography of where you happen to be. You know, do you want to tell us a bit more about, you know, what are the opportunities here?
Yeah, so I mean, I've already mentioned, and we both said about the we want to keep the talent that comes out of the universities of Cambridge in the area. Interestingly, the conversation I've been having with the startups we've been talking to, who are looking at, they're not looking at the civil aviation end of green tech. They're looking at the, you know, air mobility. So essentially taking the transit van off the road and putting it in the sky and using the network of a lot of airstrips across the whole country, particularly in rural areas, to take that sort of delivery pressure off roads, put it into the air. And the startups we're talking to, interestingly, have been saying that the situation in America is actually getting them more investor interest than they had before, because the UK feels like a safer place to put your money right now if you're going to be investing in a new industry. So that was really helpful, because we were mentioning that to our developer, going, see, there is a market. Here are all these tenants that we've been talking to. And obviously we've been talking to people like the Whittle Lab. Where do they want to incubate after people have come out of that research facility, when they want to transition into industry? How can we then have a campus that brings them together with some of the bigger players? So we're intending for this site to hook some of the bigger aviation companies, but on the site have an innovation hub that gives them access to new talent.
And I think that's one of the real challenges, isn't it? Because Cambridge has grown significantly. It continues to grow, but actually there is space beyond Cambridge itself and beyond even South Cambridge, South Cambridgeshire, into Huntingdonshire, Fenland and up to Peterborough, where we have, the fastest growing city. So it's that ripple effect and bringing people, and people move more than they've ever moved in terms of coming for jobs and seeking opportunities, particularly around collaboration. So I think that's a really interesting opportunity and challenge for us. What's the role of the public sector in green growth? Some of us in the room are public sector, some of us are private sector. What do public sector need to do to enable more of the sort of things you're talking about? Jo?
Well, there's certainly, and it's one of the things I've been talking to the Combined Authority about, is helping join the dots. So how can I make sure I'm talking to the right people? If I'm setting up a training facility that's about new technology, how can I make sure I'm talking to the right people in the area about training and skills and employment, and where the people are who need that training and skills and employment? The other big thing is the transport, the sustainable transport. Duxford, 96% of our visitors come by car. Nearly all of our staff and volunteers come by car. The pressure we put on the road is quite high at peak times. If there was sustainable transport, a green active travel route to us, we're only a couple of miles from the nearest station, but there's no bus and there's no active travel route. If those things were prioritised, we could be generating more for the economy in the area. We could be employing a wider range of people. We do quite well at attracting visitors from a lower socioeconomic background and relatively young people, but we have trouble employing them because you need a car to work at Duxford. So we're putting off a lot of people, and we're preventing a lot of young people accessing training, volunteering opportunities, and other people accessing, the well-being effect of volunteering or working with a museum. So, yes, if I had an ask of the room, it would be the transport infrastructure.
So you've got people listening in here. So no, write that down. I can see the Mayor's Chief of Staff is nodding at you. So it's being heard. Matt, what would your ask be?
I've only got a boring answer to this, I'm afraid, so I'll try and do it quickly. But, I mean, there's a lot of private sector players there that can deliver a hell of a lot. So I think the ask of public sector, unfortunately, is just the boring everyday stuff. It is, everyone bangs on about it. It is just the infrastructure, investment, coordination. I mean, I think the region could benefit from a little bit of a simplification in the governance, and trying to work out who does what and who to speak to and who has control over certain things is going to be a good step forward. I think there's something around the narrative as well. I mean, Innovate Cambridge have done quite a good job in this, and I appreciate that's not public sector, but just there's so many great thinkers in the region, there's so many great ideas, so much ambition. Sometimes there's almost too many things. It would be better if we could sort of join the dots a bit and everyone get behind like a shared long-term strategy and a long-term narrative that really sells it. The problem some people talk about is just not having a front door. For new entrants, new investors, who exactly do they speak to? Some go to the uni, some go to local authorities, some go to some of the big anchor tenants or the industry bodies, organisations. It's sort of, there's so much good stuff. Sometimes you just lose the clarity of the narrative.
And you've got people in the room that come from the private sector, and there's all sorts of disciplines in this room in terms of, their expertise and what they bring. Do you want to make a sales pitch while you're here? People that you'd like to partner with, what sort of skills and experience, really would enhance our green growth in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough?
What sort of skills and experience?
I've thrown him completely. Jo? Go on then. We'll go to Jo and then we'll come back to Matt. Come on.
So decarbonising our estate is where we would need help. So we're looking after historic buildings that were thrown up during a war to be temporary, that are still there 120 years later. And we've done quite a lot of work at Duxford in taking a lot of those buildings off of oil-fired heating and taking advantage of the fact that Cambridge Water have a borehole on site, which was historic and was off. And Cambridge Water said, hang on, we need some more water. Could we turn the borehole back on? And by the way, when it gets to the surface, we need to cool the water down. So we've now got ground source heating loop, heating 3 historic hangars, and this was a partnership. This was something that they hadn't thought of, we hadn't thought of, until they said we've got to cool the water when we get it to the surface. So making connections like that is fantastic, but we've still got a lot of estate that we haven't got a solution for yet. So, innovation in particularly in historic buildings, in decarbonising the energy consumption is where we're looking for expertise.
And it would be fair to say across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, we do have a really rich heritage of buildings of all eras. For those of you who don't know, Duxford is not unique in terms of airfields. The east of England, had many airfields, and we have quite a lot of buildings of that era elsewhere. But we also have settlements with large numbers of listed buildings. So we have some real practical challenges around some of our current thinking about what you should do doesn't always apply easily to the places where people live and work. So it's trying to balance those tensions. Matt, you've got historic estates. That you must have the same sort of problems.
Yeah, I wish I'd given that answer. Yeah, you should have given me another 5 seconds of me just sitting here in silence. That's absolutely right. The decarbonisation, the retrofit agenda on resi is key. We've got, I think, some of the most ambitious carbon objectives and embodied carbon targets in the industry. So, yes, certainly could do with some upskilling in that regard. I think a lot of the work we do with UK innovation district groups, I think the entrepreneurialism, I think, is quite a good aspect to progress. There's lots of clever people, clever ideas, but how do they make them into successful businesses? One of the things we struggle with isn't the idea generation, it's the commercialisation and keeping that in the region, in the UK, and not losing it further afield. So I think that entrepreneur skill set would be a useful one as well.
And Jo, does that sort of link across to sort of your innovation hub? Is that part of that sort of bringing people together?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea is that it would incubate ideas within the site as well, that the people who were tenants of this location would be learning from each other. Duxford has a history of innovating. So it was the first fighter base with the active Spitfire squadron. During the First World War, the reason it was built was to train aircrew, because they thought that aerial bombardment was the way to end the stalemate in the trenches. By the time they'd finished building it, the war was over. And then it went straight into continuing to look at the development of aviation and in working with the university. So the history is there all the way through. So what we'd want to do is pick that back up and continue it. We have other companies on site already who are about restoring historic aviation, but at some point they're going to have to change fuel source and they're going to need to convert. So having sort of both things on site just seems like a really cohesive idea.
So I'm going to be a bit provocative now because, every so often it's the whole conversation around, what's the difference between growth and green growth? And is green growth just sort of very fashionable? So for your organisations, why is the green growth aspect really important? Jo?
It's important to our visitors and it's important to our future visitors and our staff. If we're trying to hire Gen Z, they want to see what our green credentials are. If we're trying to offer accommodation to businesses, especially businesses working in this area, they want the most efficient buildings as their offices. They want to have flagship eco carbon zero buildings for where they're working, and their employers are going to look for that. And in the future, it's just green growth is growth. It is the area where people are going to be investing because it's what the public are going to demand.
I think that's food for thought, because I think sometimes the challenge for all of us is, we worry that it's a fashionable thing sometimes, but actually in some ways it is, because actually that is the thing that people want to buy and they want to invest in, they want to be part of that. Matt, is it the same for you?
Yeah, it's difficult because 2-word, 3-word sentences get misused, don't they, in terms of green growth? So the exact definition I probably don't know off the top of my head, but as I mentioned earlier, we're given the constraints we have. It's not really an option, like just unconstrained, sort of ill thought through growth, sort of very one-dimensional growth, purely financially focused. I just don't think that's, even if we wanted to, I don't even think it's deliverable anymore. I think, proper green growth that takes account of kind of the constraints with natural resources, with capacity, with talent, with access, it's the only way to do it. If we keep just the housing point in Cambridge is an interesting one. You're not going to grow if the businesses don't have homes and jobs and wages that support the supply chain and the employees. It just can't happen. So I don't really think it's an option. It's not a choice. It has to be.
And it is a real challenge. We've got some practical challenges in our patch. We've got Cambridge that runs from chalk streams. So we're already working with Fens Reservoir and with our local water providers and Homes England to try and look at innovative ways of resolving that practical problem. But the rest of our area has too much water. And we pump a lot of it out to the sea every day at a great expense with quite old machinery because, we've been doing this for a long time. And so it's a real challenge for us, the practical challenges of what have we naturally got on our doorstep and how do we make better use of what is naturally there in a way that actually brings the kind of growth we want at the pace that feels appropriate. Are there other things that make... That would be transferable, things that we're doing here in this patch that would be transferable over a slightly wider geography? Could what you do work everywhere? So, Matt, we've got Crown Estate much wider. How much of this is transferable? And it's not just about Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. It's a wider offer.
Yeah, I mean that's one of our main goals is thinking about how our investments in places and locations kind of interact. I don't think the sort of cut and paste model, probably not. In many places, each place is unique, and Cambridge, as we said, Cambridgeshire has some unique attributes that you can't just, in regeneration they often talk about King's Cross is brilliant, and it is a brilliant project. You can't cut and paste that anywhere else in the country, and it's the same to a degree in Cambridge. I mean, what we can do though, I think, is join up the ecosystem a bit more. I think sometimes we've grown to a degree now. This was the case in London probably 10, 15 years ago. You had to make the case of how investing in London would impact the whole nation. I think actually Cambridgeshire in its own right, or perhaps the corridor, has got to that scale now where, we've got to justify why investing in that actually has a much wider impact. And there's some quite good examples out there, where homegrown businesses like Raspberry Pi, they've said that, Cambridge was the only place they could have really grown. But I think some of their manufacturing and injection moulding happens in the Midlands. Some of their semiconductor work happens in South Wales. The success of what we do here and the growth, it can touch, every corner of the nation.
Jo?
Yeah, we're definitely thinking about Duxford Avtech as that step between. So the step between being very much startup, you're not going to be able to we haven't got the space or the airfield capacity at Duxford for that to turn into the major manufacturing. It is R&D, it is testing, and once a new idea is certified, we are expecting that manufacture would transfer to a bigger facility elsewhere. So we're really looking to be a stepping stone for that industry, to fire up that industry for the UK. Basically, we are behind Germany and the US on that, and we need to catch up, but we could overtake.
And there's some really interesting links into other sectors as well, because some of the things you're talking about link into some of the defence growth that we know is going to come. And we've got some really interesting opportunities across our area. So there are links through to other things. And again, it's that stepping stone out from Cambridge and the spin-off and the geographic sort of stepping away from one location to another location. And you're talking about then spinning out again into where do you actually then take it next? And I think that's really important because we tend to sort of think of Cambridge as being this very unique and special place, and it absolutely is. But we have a very rich resource round it. And I might be biased about Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, but those of you who are from other parts of the country, it is a very rich resource that actually we should be able to be saying, yeah, let's grow further afield. And in fact, a couple of days ago, we've been talking here about our links, for example, with Manchester, and thinking about how we join up with Manchester and how we use some of the things that they're developing and bringing it back to Cambridgeshire. And so that's a really interesting way of looking at it, because we tend to sort of be very much it's Cambridge and outwards. This is about bringing something from somewhere else and bringing it inwards. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to think more laterally about those opportunities and those connections. I'm going to come to the audience in just a moment, and I did give some of you fair warning, so I'm hoping you might have some questions. But just before we do that, that sort of broader link, is there any sort of learning about what makes it work that, would be really helpful for us to be thinking about? That magic combination. Is it right people at the right time? Do we quite have the right skill sets locally or nationally? You know, what's the magic ingredients that will enable us to go to the next step? You know, what do we need?
Well, I think the way that Oxford Avtech has come together is about finding a common goal.
Yep.
We didn't have ourselves and Keyes College didn't have the same initial interest. We were trying to protect the airfield and build a store for ourselves. They were trying to maximise their endowment. But once we started thinking together, we had a much more interesting conversation, because we found actually what we both wanted was a secure source of income and to be able to support the airfield to not prevent development in the area. So, yeah, finding that common, what do you both want to get, or what does a group of people want to get that has a common ground that you might all be able to get what you need from it?
Matt?
What do we need? I mean, smarter people than me on other panels, it does boil down to funding and money a lot of the time on things. So, and just to go into a certain area of that, I think trying to attract more VC funds to the region, I think will be really key. You know, London still massively dominates, even though I'm nicking a stat now from a previous panel. This is the benefit of being last, you see. I can sound smarter than I am. Like 70% of the innovation in the UK is outside of London, but almost the opposite is, you know, funding is within London. And there's really good signs for the region. I mean, there's great players like Carbon 13 and CIC who do great stuff locally in investment. And we're starting to attract, you know, national VCs like Sustainable Ventures have a new hub in the region. But if we could really start to get some more traction with sort of European VCs and even US VCs in the region, the trickle-down kind of multiplier effects of that will be huge.
I was going to say, and that's a brilliant segue, thank you, into, you know, just so you can be thinking of your questions. You know, you might not know all of the people who are players on our patch, and I certainly am not going to do it in justice in a couple of minutes. So there were more than the people I'm going to sort of tell you about. But, you know, we've got Cambridge Nuclear Energy Centre on our patch, which is looking at a better route to increase deployment of nuclear technology as a tool for decarbonising our energy system. Cambridge Clean Tech, a unique networking organisation formed to bring together innovators, investors, corporates and academics to develop sustainable technologies to deliver net zero ambitions. We're home to Cambridge Power, specialists in the planning and development of grid-scale energy storage and renewable generation assets across the UK. We've got Talga, based in Cambridge, and they develop green battery anodes and advanced materials to help shift the world towards a sustainable future. We've got Niobolt, based in Cambridge, developing fast EV charging, ultra fast, I should say, EV charging stations to minimise the time taken for vehicles to charge so we can get people moving quicker. And we've got Resolve Energy, also based in Cambridge, and they're engaged in building onshore wind farms in the UK and Europe and have developed a 2 gigawatt of renewable power. So it's really interesting. It's just some of the development that's already happening. I don't know the circumstances of all of those organisations, but I would suspect that many of them are spin-offs. Many of them have benefited from venture capital, and many of them, I suspect, having listened to Cambridge Angels yesterday, probably have benefited from the connections. If it's not always financial, it's often the connectivity where somebody says, I can put you in touch with someone. And that comes back to your point, Jo, doesn't it? That's networking. So we've got a room full of specialists and interested people. And we've got a roving mic that Connie's holding. Who'd like to ask the panel a question? We've got a lady down the front here.
They must have turned the heating off on the other tents because we've doubled in size. So, yeah,
we have. They heard you were speaking.
Oh, no, of course. That's the reason, yeah.
Hi, I'm Lynn Miles. I'm the Director of Economy and Place at Cambridge City Council. I have got a statement, a question and an offer, if that's all right. My sort of statement is that my portfolio at the city includes building the houses that you need to get your people to live in, but also pulling together a new team, which is a sort of retrofit centre of excellence. We've been doing quite a lot of thinking about retrofitting historic buildings because we're developing a proposition for our Guildhall and our Call Exchange and our Market Hall. So if we can share any of that thinking, let's do that. I'm going to change the order now. My offer is that one of the things that we've done is we've pulled together a Cambridge Sustainability Leadership group full of people essentially who are trying to be more sustainable in their leadership around the city. It'd be great if you guys wanted to join that and sort of share the wealth and collaborate a little bit more. And my question actually is for Jo, who, by the way, I think I owe an email from last September, but we will meet up. My question actually is just, since the last time we spoke and we came to your AvTech launch, the sort of national level industrial strategy is shifting much more towards defence because of geopolitics. And I just wanted you to say a little bit more about what sort of opportunity that might present for you and for others around in Cambridge.
Yeah, I mean,
Cambridgeshire.
We're under no illusion that sustainable aviation market has shifted towards, or rather the investment is more likely to be coming from defence. I don't really see it making a huge difference in what we're trying to do, other than there might be a little bit more investment coming our way. Obviously, being IWM, we have to be a little bit careful in terms of reputational risk and who we are connected to. And it's one of the interesting debates we've been having with our preferred developer about how broad they can go in terms of their user and how much risk we're willing to take on reputation. But yeah, it's a tricky one for us, but it is where the market is. And, we have previously accepted donors and sponsorship from that sector. So, yeah.
Thanks, Lynn. Really great question. Matt, do you have any sort of, is there anything in that for you in terms of that sort of wider issue?
I can answer the offer because I think we signed up last week as a partner. So, yeah,
fantastic.
Sold that one. On the defence point, I probably don't have a good answer. But I mean, I suppose the point around some of this technological innovation is that sometimes it sort of spits out unexpected things. And like I say, the crossover of different subsectors now, I think back to the stories of, not the same, but space and NASA and all the things that came out of that for day-to-day life that were nothing to do with, space travel. So, yeah, not much else to say on the defence front, I'm afraid.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Who else would like to ask us a question? Judith at the back.
Hi, thank you. I'm Judith Barker, the Exec Director for Place and Connectivity at CPCA, and I really just wanted to respond to the point that you were making about sustainable transport options, which I think is something that we really need to work on together, and I look forward to doing that. As you'll be aware, the combined authority is the Strategic Transport Authority and also the Passenger Transport Authority. And I think we've recognised through the work that we've done on bus reform that we understand that the market isn't working at the moment in terms of delivering buses. It's not working for residents and it's not working for the businesses, and it's not working in particular for the visitor economy. And through the consultation that we ran in the autumn where we visited Duxford as part of that, I think that message came across loud and clear. It came across from the National Trust, it came across from the Wildlife Trust, and we understand that's a piece of work that we need to do. We're really interested in working with businesses to see what we can do on an interim basis, and we're also interested in sort of developing that partnership approach to, as we move to a franchise bus model, what opportunities there are to collaborate and find really important solutions for the visitor economy, and also joining up with all of those other amazing businesses that are in the south of Cambridgeshire and more widely across, because it's all about ultimately getting people to where they want to sort of work, learn and play. And so really committed to working with you on that agenda. I just wanted to sort of make sure that I had the opportunity to respond to the points you made.
Yeah, that's fine. We are a broken record about it, I know, and we have been at all of your consultations, so I know you're aware. But, there's a broader audience, so I thought I'd mention it.
Anybody else got a question? Down at the front.
Thanks. James Curtis from Morgan Sindall. As somebody with an office in Sawston and a user of the M11 junction, very excited for the development at Duxford. My question for you, Matt, the redevelopment of the business park it's not the only game in town in the kind of northeast of Cambridge. How can you pull together with the other people that are doing stuff up there to sort of make the efficiencies and be a bit more, the green growth we're talking about for the area?
Told me you're going to ask a difficult question. So we own Cambridge Business Park in North East Cambridge. It's probably 10% of an emerging innovation district, which had gone under the radar a bit until Michael Gove kind of a few years ago worked out that it was pretty significant. I mean, if developed out, it'll be top 10 global innovation district under kind of any metric. So it's a really, really significant project for the region. The challenge is that it's in multiple ownership. So we've got Trinity College, we've got St John's, we've got ourselves, we've got Brockton, other investors, Landsec, the council. So we have made a real effort to kind of collaborate where we can. We set up new governance structures. We're having sort of master plan coordination meetings. We're trying to work together so that we're not just all competing over local demand, that we can work together, have something of scale that can compete on the global stage. So we can try and collectively, attract some of those bigger businesses, the next AstraZeneca, where are they going to go? Well, hopefully, North East Cambridge. So yeah, it's a big effort there. There is some, we are slightly in competition in certain areas, but there's a real effort and a real buy-in from all those stakeholders to make sure it works as a place. The infrastructure's joined up. We don't all just do, 27 different paddle courts. We actually think about what the local communities need, what the economy needs, and try and plan it between us.
And I think that's a bit of a gift of a question, because actually that's really what the combined authority is seeking to do. Actually to have that strategic view to enable those of you on the ground to be networking, but importantly to try and do that over a wider geography, and also to work cross-government to talk to the different bits of government that actually are able to deliver some of the infrastructure that we need and provide the sort of support. For the best one in the world, lots of things do not sit neatly in one government department. They are cross-departmental. Currently, they're cross-council. We're resolving that. We will have local government reorganisation, so hopefully that'll get a bit smoother. But it is that joining up. But I really like the fact that actually this is about on the ground, working out those opportunities to collaborate when perhaps naturally we would be in competition with each other. And I think that speaks volumes about the sector and probably about how you work and your colleagues are working, because I suspect that probably has not traditionally been the way people work. Go on, Matt.
Well, it's a good your question before about the role of the public sector and the private sector. I mean, that district was driven by the public sector. They set the area action plan and some of the planning policy. They knocked heads together and talked about what they wanted to achieve. And then what's quite nice is now the private sector is trying to take on that mantle and the leadership to really drive it forward. So I mean, that's how things should work. Set up and unlocked by public sector and driven forward by the private.
Fantastic. Have we got another question? I'm going to leave a long pregnant pause so that people can think of a question.
Can I do a shout out to one of the organisations you mentioned?
You can.
Just while people are
Please
thinking.
Please do.
I thought Cambridge Clean Tech were a really good example of where we can lead green growth for the nation. For those that don't know, Cambridge Clean Tech, grassroots kind of clean tech, local industry body and kind of ecosystem convener. 300 plus members, probably the biggest organisation of its nature in the country. Done some great stuff locally, but now they've got some real traction, and they are spearheading the climate tech supercluster, which covers the whole, all the micro clusters within the UK, focusing on clean tech, as well as some clusters in Europe as well, and joining, trying to make those. I won't make any political statements around that, but trying to rejoin. That was definitely not the word to use. Trying to reconnect with the innovators in Europe. And some of those, ecosystems in Brussels, in Paris, around Station F, and those types of places.
But I think that's an interesting challenge, isn't it? We are living and working in an evolving world, an evolving policy position, an evolving international position. All those dynamics actually directly affect what happens here and directly affect our green growth. So actually I think we're all mindful that, we don't live in splendid isolation. All of the things that are happening around us every day of the week, and when there's a new change in the system somewhere, that actually has a direct impact on what we do. And sometimes it's an opportunity and sometimes it might be a threat. I'm going to come back to that theme in a minute. Has anybody got any more questions? Because if not, I'm going to... see, look, I've given you time. There we are, fantastic. So one there, then we're coming to you.
Olga Turner-Baker from ECIST. I was wondering how you're looking at health and well-being in relation to green growth, and have you set any benchmarks or targets? Because obviously there's a huge synergy between delivering green places and delivering places that support health and obviously have a big impact on local healthcare systems, etc.
Great question. Who'd like to answer that?
I could start, yeah. I mean, we're probably a third of the way through the outline planning process, so we're kind of still in listening mode to a degree. We're trying to engage I see a few people in the room that are involved in this and the project, but we're trying to engage really widely, really extensively, really meaningfully, and sort of take on that feedback. We're doing inclusivity surveys of kind of our master plans. A lot of thoughts going into the landscaping. One of the problems we have as a park is it's just secured, like a lot of innovation sites. You know, a modern innovation district is fully permeable and open and has something for everyone. So thinking carefully about how we connect into green loops and green infrastructure and give people access to nature. You know, we're in quite a dense environment on our scheme. So thinking about very high quality areas of green space, but also just making the links through to the Cam River, to the fens, to country parks is really important for those that don't have access. We're spending a lot of time thinking about, I mean, this is a really fun challenge for us, is this is such a big area. You're kind of building a high street from scratch, which is a really interesting challenge in a science environment. I can't think of another scheme that's really doing it. So how is that an inclusive, healthy place that, you know, supports well-being for not just the people in it, but the wider community? So thinking about one example we give is, you know, we don't just want a load of posh, expensive gyms just for our tenants. We want community-run, community-led, community-managed sports community facilities as part of it. So people are coming onto the park even if they're not working there. You know, it's really open. So lots more to do. So if you've got ideas, we've got a consultation on the 4th and 7th of June on the park. So yeah, please come along to that if you'd like to contribute some further ideas.
Fantastic. Jo?
I'm not sure there's a huge amount I can say about this. Obviously, the museum itself has an agenda around wellbeing and social value, and lots of work that we do with volunteers, with veterans, with refugees and asylum seekers, but that's not really necessarily relevant to the project we're talking about. We have, because we are arm's length public body, gone through a public procurement process to appoint our developer, and therefore their bid was assessed on having a 10% social value score. So we are asking a lot of them in terms of what we expect them to deliver in terms of green space, amenity, access for the community, local employment, local training, etc.
And a bit of a shout out. The microphone works. What about that battery? And a bit of a shout out for my council. We've got a place strategy. Now, we're not the only council in the country to have a place strategy, and I can see my chief exec beaming at the back. But the place strategy has been really influential for us because we've talked about health and wellbeing, and we've talked about green, and we've talked about the aspirations, and that's come from our communities because we've actually been out and done lots of engagement work. We asked our residents, we asked our businesses, we asked our other stakeholders, private and public sector, you know, what did they want for the place? And we gave them the question, what if? What if you could live somewhere that was green? What if you could get around easily? What if actually it was a place you felt really proud to be in? And that's given us a really good mandate for the sorts of things that people want to see. And our developers, when they then come and talk to us, come and brilliantly talk about our place strategy as part of their pitch, which is exactly what we were hoping they might do. So any of you thinking of pitching in Huntingdonshire, please look at our place strategy. But actually what it's doing is we're saying, you know, be creative. You know, we don't want just another standard development. We want a development that really encourages the community to be able to access the space it's in. We want the wider community to come into those spaces. So we've got developers who've been talking about, you know, we're going to build something near a housing estate. We're thinking of making it a proper country park, but we're thinking of adding trim trails and other things so that people can genuinely use it as if it is a general public space, not just for the employers, which is sort of what you're talking about. And I think that's really important, but they're also then thinking about, and actually, how can we add our site as part of the cycle network? Because we've got a gap between this bit and this bit. So it's sometimes the most lateral thinking that happens, but actually the brilliant thing is people are talking, and then as developers with local communities and finding opportunities that we might not have spotted, but they're certainly sort of taking that opportunity and running with it, and that's really welcome. I think we had a question coming here, this lady.
Hi, Alison Taylor from Cambridge 2030 and Conscious Communications. Matt, you and I have had conversations about the local area, local community, northeast Cambridge, and the inequality there and some of the complexity of need in that community, which we're very close to. And there is lots of work to be done there, and I have absolutely no doubt that Crown Estates will be taking that community with them on that journey as we develop that area and bring more wealth into that area. My question is, how do we measure the success of what we do there from the local community's perspective, and create something that is an exemplar, if you like, of the sort of social mobility we can achieve together through partnership? What partners do we bring into that to make sure that we've got the right metrics, and starting from now, in 20 years hence, that we can say genuinely this is the positive impact that we've had on that really deprived community?
I mean, it's the golden question, isn't it, around social? But I've been in forums for the last decade thinking about how do you measure social impact and social value. I mean, it is key to our ambitions for the park is to have meaningful impact. We're working with, actually you might want to pass the microphone to your left, Olivia in the room, who's been brought in specially, sort of a dedicated resource to help us really think about how we bring our vision to life, particularly around social impact, how we hold ourselves to account. So yeah, setting some proper targets and measuring that over time. Crown Estate like to think in, sorry, this is another strap line, but think in generations rather than financial cycles. So we don't just want to do a couple of initiatives over a year that look good, tick the box, and then don't have any meaningful long-term impact. So we're trying to think about ambitions for the 1 to 2 year period, 5 to 10 year period, and 10 to 25 year period, and onwards. So we're thinking, generationally. We're trying to hold ourselves to account by working with independent organisations to help. So it's not just us marking our own homework. So we do a lot with the Connected Places Catapult, who are helping us with.
So it's
You
that
did
time
warn
of the
us.
day. It's the trolleys being moved about.
Is that telling us we should be wrapping up? Yeah, so they're helping us kind of set a proper, robust framework that we can then measure as we go. I mean, the things that probably are on my mind, we haven't. This is still an ongoing process. We haven't published anything yet, and we'll be working on it probably for the next year. I think the things that would be most important for me, I mean, the area of Cambridge we're in, Business Park, that does have some of the most acute differentials and inequality. I mean, I won't name areas, but there's great prosperity in some of the science parks, and some of the immediate surrounding communities aren't benefiting from it. So some of the metrics about increasing the amount of people that live. God, why isn't my microphone going off? Those that live locally can also get jobs that are in a walking distance and are well paid and are introducing them to kind of new sectors. And that's, again, linking it back to the topic. Yeah. Green growth and things like clean tech, they do have more opportunities than some other subsectors of science innovation. There's more manufacturing in there. There's more associated supply chain jobs. So getting a more meaningful number of that local walkable catchment involved in what we're doing will be probably the greatest measure of success for me.
So I think you've added a new category, which is inclusive green growth. So thank you for that. Did you want to add anything, Jo?
Have I gone now? Hello? Okay, good. Oh, one down. Oh, do you want that one? There you go. Okay. Excuse me. Sorry, that was all unnecessary noises. My apologies. Just from the experience of the museum sector, so from a different angle, where we have the most impact is where we establish and maintain long-term relationships with community partners. So we have been working, example at Duxford, with Little Miracles, who support families with disabled children, for 7 years. And over that time, first thing we did was deliver a changing places toilet with some help from South Cambridgeshire District Council. Thank you. Name check for them. But the next thing we did is they helped us design a new playground for Duxford. And they, being able to talk to them after we installed that playground and the change it had made for their lives, having the change of place toilet and the playground. I can't wait to see what we're going to do with them next, to be honest. But it's about that long-term committing to being in that relationship and knowing that working with a community partner takes time and it takes effort, and they haven't got the same interests or agendas as you. You have to understand what they're looking for in order to be able to find that common ground that I was talking about before. But just one big up for my playground. It's the first play offer at a museum or heritage site to achieve a PIPA accreditation for inclusive play, and I'm very proud of that.
That's remarkable. That is remarkable. And I can say as a parent of a child with special educational needs who's actually been to Duxford and been part of one of those sessions, I have to say, if your children haven't been, you need to go with them because it is the most fantastic day out. And if as adults you've not been, you still need to go. It's fantastic. Are there any more questions? No? We're reaching that point in the day. So I'm going to in a minute ask Matt and Jo to make some closing remarks, but I'm going to cheekily just make a few of my own, if that's okay. I think it's a really, really exciting sector, and I'm really taken by your comments, particularly about our younger generations and our newer businesses and the aspiration and why this is front and centre to them. But I'm also reflecting about the importance of doing the right thing in the bigger context. But, there's an inkling there equally about the pragmatic bit of actually this is better value for money in many cases. I think there's so many reasons to do it. We have got the most fantastic area. I'm sure you feel as passionately about your place as we feel about ours. We've got the fastest growing city up at Peterborough with a huge young population. We've got some fantastic rural communities. We're trying to get some of that technology out in the Fens. We've got a green academy in St Ives. Some fantastic stuff happening on the ground, and I think really it's that opportunity to say, what can green be? And it is a broad topic. You're talking about very different projects with very different parts of what green could be, but they're all growth. And I think for me, I'm sat here thinking, there's so much we can take away. I like the partnership stuff. I like this fact that actually this is about bringing people together and getting them to innovate collectively. I love the use of actually how do we bring heritage and science together in a slightly different way, and equally the creative response to, I really, really want to build something there, because actually, let's face it, lots of landowners are kind of going, how do I unlock the economic potential of my land? But actually doing something really creative that has another benefit, which isn't necessarily the obvious one of let's put houses on it or warehouses. So I think there's lots to learn from the things that you've talked about. Matt, your sort of closing remarks or any asks of the audience possibly?
Ask of the audience would be just come along to our consultation and give us some feedback where I answered the questions poorly, and you can help us improve them. Closing remarks. I'm probably coming back to your question around green growth versus growth. It's been really disappointing to see, the net zero agenda become a bit of a political issue and people rolling back commitments. Crown Estate, we think it's an enduring global issue that, might be a little bit unfashionable now to some, but it's going to come around. And, it's such a great opportunity where particularly other countries are reducing their investment, reducing their commitments in this area, for us to steal a bit of a march over the next sort of medium term. And, Cambridgeshire, Peterborough are really well set to be a leader in the UK and to put the UK in that position. So, the plea would be for everyone here, don't lose faith in that market. And actually some of the innovation, the investors, the potential, the growth, in these sort of green economy sectors and jobs is huge. So, let's get a bit of a move on the next few years.
Thank you. Jo?
I don't think I can top that. I would absolutely second all of that. Yes, we need to keep the faith, and we need to show what the UK can do using the advantages that we've got in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, as we've talked about.
Can you join me in thanking our panel? They've been fantastic. Thank you very much, Matt and Jo. Really enjoyed our conversation. There are lots of brochures. There are lots of us in the room that are from the area if you want to have a conversation with us. And I suspect you can also have a conversation with Matt and Jo if you'd like to let them get off the stage before you mob them. Thank you very much, everybody. Safe journey home for those of you who are now travelling home.